You wronged someone 7 years ago. You barely remember it. Maybe you cut them off in traffic. Maybe you said something careless at a party. You forgot about it the next day. They did not. Now, imagine the creature holding that grudge is not a person. It is a bird. A bird that weighs barely a pound, with a brain the size of a walnut, and it remembers your face with more precision than most humans ever could. This is not a fable. This is not a metaphor. This is what crows actually do, and the science behind it says something deeply uncomfortable about what memory, intelligence, and revenge really are. In 2011, researchers at the University of Washington, led by John Marsloff, published a study that changed how scientists think about animal cognition. The experiment was simple and slightly unsettling. Researchers wore a specific caveman mask while trapping and banding wild crows on the university campus. The trapping itself was brief and harmless. The crows were released within minutes. Then the researchers waited. Weeks later, anyone who walked across campus wearing that same mask was dive-bombed, screamed at, and mobbed by crows. Not just the crows that had been trapped. Crows that had never been captured joined the attacks. They had learned from watching. The grudge had spread. 5 years later, Marsloff repeated the walk. The response was the same. Crows that could not possibly have been present during the original trapping still recognized the mask and still attacked. The knowledge had been passed down. A grudge, inherited across generations. Think about that for a moment. You do something a crow does not like. That crow tells other crows. Those crows tell their offspring. Years later, birds that never met you will attack you on sight. You have been entered into a database you cannot access, cannot edit, and cannot delete. How is this possible in a brain that weighs 12 grams? The answer starts with a structure called the nidopallium caudolateral. That is a mouthful, so think of it as the crow equivalent of your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for planning, decision-making, and thinking about the future. In mammals, this kind of higher cognition lives in the neocortex, a layered sheet of brain tissue that evolved over millions of years. Birds do not have a neocortex at all. They evolved an entirely different architecture that accomplishes many of the same things. Neuroscientist Onur Gunturkun at Ruhr University Bochum has spent decades mapping this parallel evolution. His research shows that corvid brains pack neurons at an extraordinarily high density. A crow brain has roughly 1.5 billion neurons. That is more neurons per gram than a primate brain. The hardware is tiny. The processing power is not. But raw neuron count does not explain grudges. What explains grudges is something more specific. Crows have episodic-like memory, the ability to remember specific events in specific places at specific times involving specific individuals. This is the same type of memory you use when you recall where you were on your birthday 3 years ago or what someone said to you during an argument. For a long time, scientists believed episodic memory was uniquely human. It requires a sense of self moving through time. It requires mental time travel, the ability to replay past events and project future ones. Psychologist Endel Tulving, who first defined episodic memory in 1972, argued it was the most advanced form of memory and possibly exclusive to humans. Then the crows complicated everything. Nicola Clayton, at the University of Cambridge, ran a landmark series of experiments with western scrub jays, close relatives of crows in the corvid family. She gave the birds perishable and non-perishable food to cache, to hide and store for later. The birds remembered not just where they hid each item, but what they hid and when they hid it. If enough time had passed for the perishable food to go bad, they skipped it and went straight for the food that was still fresh. This is not instinct. This is a calculation that requires knowing what happened, where it happened, and how much time has passed since it happened. That is episodic-like memory by any functional definition. Now apply this back to the grudge. A crow does not just remember that humans are dangerous. It remembers that a specific human, with a specific face, in a specific location, did a specific thing. And it files that memory under threat and holds it there, apparently indefinitely. But here is where it gets stranger. Crows do not just hold grudges, they communicate them. Marsloff's team found that during the initial mobbing events, Other crows who were merely watching, not involved, learned to associate the mask with danger. This is social learning, but it goes further than simple imitation. The observing crows did not just copy the behavior. They formed their own independent grudge against the mask wearer based entirely on secondhand information. In human terms, this is gossip. Someone tells you a person is untrustworthy. You have never met that person, but the next time you see them, you already do not trust them. You inherited a judgment. Crows do exactly this, but they do it with enough fidelity that the grudge persists across years and across generations of birds. Behavioral ecologist Alex Taylor at the University of Auckland has studied New Caledonian crows, another corvid species, and documented tool use that rivals early hominin technology. These crows manufacture hooked tools from plant stems, select specific materials for specific tasks, and innovate new tool designs when presented with unfamiliar problems. Taylor's experiments show the crows are not just using tools through trial and error. They appear to plan their tool use in advance, selecting the right tool before approaching the problem. So you have an animal that remembers faces for years, communicates threat information socially, passes grudges across generations, makes and uses tools, and plans for the future. And it does all of this with a brain that fits inside a walnut shell. Why does this matter to you? Because it forces a question your species has been avoiding for a very long time. What exactly makes human intelligence special? For most of history, humans defined intelligence as the thing humans have: language, tool use, planning, theory of mind, the ability to understand what another individual is thinking. Every time scientists found one of these abilities in another animal, the definition shifted, the goalpost moved. Corvids have been knocking down those goalposts one by one for the past 30 years. Your ancestors diverged from the lineage that led to birds roughly 320 million years ago. That is, before dinosaurs, before mammals had fur, before anything on this planet had figured out what a flower was. And yet, across that staggering gulf of evolutionary time, crows arrived at solutions that look remarkably like yours. Memory, grudges, social learning, tool manufacture, future planning. This is called convergent evolution. Two completely unrelated lineages, separated by hundreds of millions of years, independently evolving the same cognitive abilities because those abilities solve the same survival problems. It means intelligence is not a fluke. It is not a miracle that happened once in one primate lineage on one African savanna. It is a pattern, a solution that evolution finds again and again when the pressure is right. So let us reconstruct a moment. A crow is perched on a power line above a parking lot. It watches a man walk below. The man threw a rock at it 3 years ago. The crow has not forgotten. It calls. Two other crows arrive. They have never seen this man before, but they trust the alarm. All three dive. The man flinches, covers his head, and hurries to his car. He has no idea why. The crow does. The crow remembers everything: the shape of his face, the color of his jacket, the exact stretch of pavement where it happened. And it told its friends. You think of grudges as a human flaw, a pettiness, something therapists encourage you to release. But for a crow, a grudge is not petty. It is a survival file. An entry in a shared threat database, maintained by an entire social network across years and generations. It is how a 12-gram brain keeps a 1-pound body alive in a world full of things that want to hurt it. You hold grudges because your ancestors needed to remember who was dangerous. The friend who stole food, the stranger who attacked, the neighbor who could not be trusted. That memory kept you alive long before courts or contracts or locks on doors. Crows hold grudges for the same reason. They arrived at the same answer through a completely different evolutionary path, with a completely different brain, across 320 million years of separation. You wronged someone 7 years ago and forgot about it the next day. A crow would not have forgotten. A crow would have told every crow it knows. And 7 years from now, birds you have never seen would still know your face. Maybe the question is not why crows hold grudges like humans. Maybe the question is why humans keep pretending they are the only ones who do.